Okay. Hi, I'm Craig, and I was on the dev branch, and this is my showcase for my spell Tapana Portal. So a quick overview of the spell. So the spell type is a mantra, which means it consumes one shell upon cast, and the player will gain 10 focus. The focus gain was very minimal just because the spell itself is quite strong in itself anyway. It is wisdom scaling, which I will get into in a little bit later. The effect isn't a time based, it's health based, and the cooldown has been put to 2 minutes. So initially, the cooldown wasn't really that detrimental. However, after some feedback from Mark yesterday, I've decided to put a cooldown on 2 minutes. And if I had more time as well, I'd probably extend that cooldown for as long as the demons are alive. So even if it past 2 minutes, if they're somehow still alive from healing spells, then you can't cast until your current set of demons have wiped out. So essentially, when you cast the spell, you will spawn 1 to 3 minions who fight by your side. That scales on wisdom. So below 12 wisdom, you only spawn 1. 12 to 14 is 2, and 15 plus is 3. The demons will engage in melee combat to the nearest enemy. And they can also do one more thing, which I'll talk about in a second. One more thing that I did do to them is I reduced their health. They did have the initial Naraka Warrior health, which is 156, but also due to Mark's feedback, I reduced it down to 80 currently. Did a little bit of testing, probably could be tweaked a bit more, but for now it's at 80. So a little bit of lore behind the actual spell. So first of all, I chose the Naraka class because it was just due to interest. I really enjoy that hellish sort of inspiration behind it. The Tapana Naraka name itself comes from one of the 8 hot Narakas, which the description at the top in this Naraka, hell guards impale beings on a fiery spear until flames issue from their noses and mouths. Initially, it was called Padma Portal, and it was more of like a cold spell, but with the design direction, I ended up going for red and fire, and it only seemed right to change the name. And yeah, the Naraka demons serve to torment. So the whole job is to torment other people. And one design change I made during the when I was trying to make the demons look distinct was not only making them red to suit Tapana, but also giving them the trident weapon as a fitting weapon, as you can see on the painting on the left. The main selling point behind this behind this spell, apart from having a companion, which obviously is seen in a lot of Souls-like games, is the execute function. So execute is well known as a player function. Once the enemy you're fighting goes below 25 points of health, you can press A to activate an execution. It's a new mechanic for AIs. It's not actually part of their behavior tree, so I had to do it manually through a AI controller. And luckily, because the karma system only applies to the player, it actually does give negative karma to the player upon execution. You'll be able to see that in live action, hopefully, later. With the performance, so the performance of the spell, the regular use of spell maintains a stable performance, which I will actually show the CPU and GPU clips near the end. But one thing I do want to talk about is that the first cast causes temporary lag due to load sync. Now, right near the end of my LOF2, I tried many different ways to try and have async work within C++. However, through more research, there was certain managers and includes that would have taken me too much time to restructure, and at the moment I'm just using load synchronous. So once the first cast has been done, it works completely fine. However, if I were to do this again, I'd spend more time on setting up the asynchronous loading upon the start of the spell. And here is my flow chart. It's very simple, but it does its job. It tells you exactly how the cast will spawn the minions in, and then they kind of have a life of their own from the typical AI controller, because it is derived from the AI controller, and it just adds the extra execute function in there. And the code design chart as well, showing that it's derived from the usual controller and Naraka Warrior, but we just made some slight tweaks to make it independent and to add the execute in.
5 minutes.
So that's perfect time. That's great. So now I can show it off in Engine. Hopefully this doesn't mess up. So when we spawn in, we have our spell on the mantra slot there. One thing I do want to disclose first of all is currently in the bootcamp file, it's not consuming shells for mantras that are made with a C++ script. So I can show a navmesh check, which actually refunds the conch shell if it doesn't spawn. However, when I do get a successful cast, you'll notice that the number doesn't go down, and that's just because the conch shell isn't working at the moment. So if I were to press 1, it'll spawn me in some demons. As I said, these demons will spawn in, and you get a number of them based on your wisdom. So if I were to go in and increase the player wisdom above the 3-person threshold, I can actually spawn in 3. One more thing I do want to demonstrate before I show them interacting with enemies is that they will not spawn in an area without a nav mesh. So as you can see there, your conch shell number goes up due to refunding. One thing I will do is just restart it because I've spawned like 5 of them in and they take about 40 seconds to die. So if I were to make my way over to the Tyriags, I can spawn myself in some demons. Once the demons make their way in, they will fight with the nearest enemy. This one spawned on the wrong nav mesh, actually, so I'll spawn some more in. And we're hoping that they'll survive long enough to actually get one of those execution interacts for you guys. There's one. And as you can see, an enemy has been executed automatically. It's through a on enemy hit check that I have set up. And essentially, they will fight for you against the other AI until they either die from health diminish loss or from damage. So yeah, a few more things I want to show. Well, one of the last things I want to show is the actual performance behind these spells. So I'll just play these both here. I think this one starts around here. I think that's the same clip. Well, watch this one then. If I have a bit more time, I'll show you the game state as well. So it's very stable after the first cast. I'll just see if I can get the other clip up if I have time.
About 1 minute.
Okay, cool. I believe it starts around here. So this is just showing off the actual game stats as well. Just to prove that it's stable, really. And the last thing I will do is leave you guys with the C++ open as my header file with all the appropriate accessible variables. And then all of my functions in here as well. And I'll leave it there, and then I am open to questions.
Thank you very much for that. Nice work. Yeah, so I guess I will start off with any questions I've got. So I guess in terms of time management, how did you approach this? Knowing like, because you kind of got an idea early on that you wanted to do a summon spell. I think someone probably mentioned that it wasn't the easiest thing to do, but yeah,
yeah.
Know, what you did for managing your time.
So actually, during LOF 0, I went through 3 different iterations of spells. I actually initially had a teleport one, which me and Matt talked about wasn't really viable for the game. And after the 3rd iteration, I passed my LOF 0 with this spell. My main chunk of LOF 1 was taken up doing the execute. Initially, in order to maintain like more in order to use my time well, I tried the executor first and I couldn't get it working. So then I worked on trying to make the spell look a bit more seamless. I used a lot of online different references. I'm personally not actually I graduated in design, so using C++, I only started about 6 weeks ago, so I used a lot of online support. I had my own C# my own C++ learning notes document set up. I used a good old pen and paper. I can't really show you it up close, but a lot of stuff I've kept on paper of how I'm going to go about tasks every day. And of course, using the Handsoft up to 3 times a day to kind of write down my own thoughts so that I could keep myself on track. And I sometimes compromised on certain performance with at the start I compromised on performance here with the async load. I feel like I could have put a lot more time into that. However, I wanted to make sure that everything down here ran a lot better. I removed the pawn from the include and only used a single include from the class it came from. So this removed a lot of megabytes from the folder. So my blueprint was initially 12 meg and now it's 3.6. So I was very happy with the efficiency on that. But other than that, yeah, just using a lot of physical notes and Handsoft to keep on top of my time.
Nice. So how did you go about testing your spell? Was there anything in particular you did, or yeah, can you talk a little bit about that?
Okay, so with testing, I used a lot of debugs, a lot of debug strings onto the screen, different colors, different keys, everything. And then when I got into the C++ part, I also used a lot of debugs strings. However, the main way that I tested it was making sure that the pawns would spawn in the correct place with my spawn AI from class. And with that, I used draw spheres, which I coded in at the start, and I just used this throughout to make sure the placements were correct, especially when we brought in the spawn demons here. When we brought in the project pointer navigation, not only did I want it to check whether the nav mesh nearby, but when it did find the nav mesh, I wanted it to add that displacement onto the actual orientation where the demons would spawn. As the actual demon spawns to the left, right, and front of the player, and the maths is done here. So adding the displacement in as well, I need to use debug spheres quite a lot.
Nice, thank you very much. That's all my questions. Still got like a minute or so if anyone wants to ask any quick questions.
Yes, Alex.
Hi, looks class, by the way.
Thank you.
If there's anything that you could be like critically reflective of yourself of in this, what would it be? How would you want to improve if you did it again?
I think that in some places, like with the load sync and also some of the behavioral tree issues with the pawn, I cut some corners. So the actual demons themselves will still attempt to spawn a fireball animation wise due to their behavioral tree, but they've had the projectile removed because it was too overtuned to have the, like, if you spawn 2 demons and they both target the same person, which happens a lot of the time, all they have to do is fire 2 fireballs and it one-shots people, and it was too overtuned. So I removed that, but I didn't remove the actual animation from the behavior tree, so it looks a bit clunky. I feel like if I could go back, I'd kind of create an iteration of the behavioral tree that would take out the ranged attacks altogether. And as well as that, obviously the async issue. I'd love to be able to async from the start of the spell so that there's less lag on the first cast.
I wish I mentioned that because I think that's a 2-second job to fix the fireball thing.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, it doesn't matter. That is time there, so we'll have to move
Cool.
on. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you,
Well done.
guys.